And you know, it's easy to forget or to not notice how significant this is, how significant it is that we have been able to shut down our lives for the sake of all of us. Um, so this is just something I think, you know, when we're looking at, you know, how we get out of this, we really have to constantly return to that concept of, you know, making individual sacrifices for the sake of all of us. And that when we do that, we will be able to succeed. We will be able to move forward. Okay. So let me just move this. Okay. So now what I did with comparing the virus chart to the way that the planets are moving in the universe, I discovered some phases. I discovered that this virus is going to come to us in waves. And this really resonates with the science. The more that I listen to the science, the more it resonates with the astrology, which I think is really interesting. I'm sorry, I'm getting more folks coming in here. Okay. Okay, so there are some hot degrees. There are some hot locations in the sky, in the that when those are triggered by a planetary um, alignment, we start to see things activated here on Earth. This is how astrology works. Um, those degrees are going to be activated in three sort of chunks. And this is why I see this kind of unfolding over the course of the year, with the sort of significant time frames being July 10th through August 2nd, October 25th through November 13th. Those are the times that we're really going to see the more sobering headlines, the more difficult experiences. And that's because the same areas of the sky that were activated when this virus first took off get reactivated, specifically around those mid-July to early August, late October to mid-November timeframes. So, you know, when we're looking at July, we could start to see how there's a new phase of the health and financial crisis that begins to evolve. We could begin to see maybe difficulty with the United States getting that money that they secured for unemployed people, to actually getting it to them, that this may be a continuing problem. We're just beginning to see some of that now. And then in October 25th through November 13th, particularly, that's when we could start to see, you know, another wave. So I think that's how, you know, the science is really saying this as well, but I definitely see this through the astrology. There's also some good news, and I want to get to that too, because we get a lot of bad news. Okay, so I looked at when we first had the first human vaccine trial begin in March. It was March 16th. And I looked at the astrology of that time frame and compared it to some of these other transits. One of the things that interested me is that this particular one, not only was it ahead of its schedule, like I think they were 2 months earlier than they expected in terms of, you know, where the science got them in developing this first trial vaccine, but it also uses something called synthetic messenger RNA. And that synthetic messenger RNA was actually developed during the last time we had this Jupiter in Aquarius, which we're going to see again in December. And I'll talk about that when we get a little further on. So basically what's happened is the same astrological alignment we had in 2009 comes back around in 2020 in December, and it lines up with this particular technique that scientists are using to create a vaccine. And this alignment is very positive. So that to me suggests that by December, we are definitely going to see some kind of scientific breakthrough where this vaccine is concerned. The other thing I want to mention is the time frames that we could see a new vaccine, or maybe not a vaccine, but new therapies, because there's all kinds of things happening right now. I think there are more than 100 different trials and tests of therapies going on around the world right now. So there's no shortage of attempts at finding something. When we look at the astrology, it feels to me like we could see some good news on that front around the June 21st, 22nd timeframe, the July 5th timeframe, and the July 17th through the 25th, and then again around August 8 and 9. So as you can see, there are these little moments of good news that we get, these little moments of positive results. It doesn't mean that everything gets solved, because as you know, looking at the astrology and listening to the science, we are still going to be experiencing this virus for quite some time. However, along with those difficult aspects of the virus, we're also going to be experiencing some breakthroughs. So there's kind of this dovetail of both experiences happening at the same time. And I'm looking at June, really July, August, October, November, and then by December, it really feels like we have some sort of breakthrough. Definitely in January, December, January. And this is because Jupiter shifts into the sign of Aquarius December, I believe it's December 17th. Oh, December 19th, sorry. And Jupiter shifting into Aquarius really is the dawning of that age of Aquarius. It really is that time of, celebrating how we have worked as a group, becoming much more supportive and aware of all the people, not just a small group of them that are the wealthy or the affluent or the elites. But this becomes a time when we really see that, and I'm using, just so you know, I'm using this really fun GIF from, if any of you saw the 40-Year-Old Virgin, the end scene was so fun. Because it feels like the mood lifts when we get to January, December. And I know that's a ways away, but I think it's helpful to just sort of hang on to that. The other thing I want to mention is that when Jupiter moved into Aquarius in the past, we have seen major scientific breakthroughs. And I have a list of them here. I'll just see if you can see that. The list is the very first antibiotic for pneumonia, which is, this coronavirus is a version of that respiratory illness, in 1937, when Jupiter moved into Aquarius. In 1949, when Jupiter was in Aquarius, the polio virus was first grown in a lab, which led to the ability to vaccinate against polio. In 1961, when Jupiter moved into Aquarius, the virus MRSA, which is another version of a coronavirus, was discovered, and ibuprofen was patented. So these are major developments when Jupiter went into Aquarius. In 1985, they developed a blood test for the AIDS infection. That was also when Jupiter was in Aquarius. In 1997, they determined how aspirin worked, and that led to prescribing aspirin for circulatory issues. And in 2009 is when when Jupiter moved into Aquarius in 2009, they developed the RNA technique that is now being used to develop a new coronavirus vaccine. That's why I feel like by the time we get to December and January, when Jupiter is in Aquarius, when Jupiter also makes some important alignments to Uranus and Saturn, that we will begin to see those breakthroughs. And I do think these are going to be historic breakthroughs. They're going to launch a whole new way of doing medicine and also doing healthcare in general. I mean, we really are seeing the disintegration of our old systems now. And whoops, sorry about that. In a similar way to when we saw the disintegration of our systems in the 30s during the Depression, we're going to be seeing new government systems coming online, probably more next year. I expect us to see more things like a New Deal as a result of all of the changes. Okay, so I have to share this one fun GIF. Some of you who have been in my presentations before have seen this guy. Okay, Jupiter square Uranus. This is something that happens on January 14th in 2021. This is really important. This really does suggest a breakthrough of some kind scientifically. And it also suggests a breakthrough in the way that we as a society work. This is right before the inauguration of a new president. You know, I don't know if we're going to have a new president, but this is for another presentation, the election, but I have seen some very strong signs that we have a new president in 2021. But we definitely have a new way of doing society. There is no question, no matter who gets elected, we are not going to be doing society in the same way. And this is largely because of this alignment. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, it's Bill Nye, the science guy. Jupiter conjunct Saturn, which happens even before Jupiter square Uranus, in December 19th through the 23rd. This is a big one too. These two planets coming together in an air sign launches a new 700-year cycle. It really is that beginning of the new age. And it's exciting. It's kind of, you know, scary right now because we're in the midst of the disintegration period. But as we move into the end of the year and next year, we're really going to start to see this taking shape. We're getting small hints of it now in the way that you're seeing the governors taking charge of their response to COVID-19, in the way that you're seeing individuals taking responsibility for their communities by staying home, and the way that we're using technology differently. These are all Saturn and Aquarius manifestations. And Saturn in Aquarius is really giving us the first indicator of what the next 3 or 4 years are going to be like. And it really is going to be different. So let me see. I think that was my last slide here. Yeah. So that was the last little bit. I'd love to hear any questions that you all have. I just kind of blasted through that, but I've been doing a lot of research on this, and anyone who has any questions, please let me know. You can either put those in the chat here on Zoom, or you can put them on the Instagram live comments. But you know, I'm definitely seeing this whole thing. Okay, best. So Lisa's asking, how do we prepare our mindset? Well, a big part of it is just surrender, which I know everybody hates to hear. Here's the thing about where we're at right now. All of the Capricorn tests, the Capricorn Cancer tests that we've been going through for the last 2 years are wrapping up. And the reason, what they have taught us really, are what really matters. We're really getting to know that on a deep level as we get quarantined for weeks and weeks on end. We're realizing, yeah, I didn't really need to spend that money on that thing because here I am at the end of the world and it doesn't even matter to me. Or we're really getting to know ourselves in a deep way that we're starting to understand who we really are when it comes right down to it, because we're in the thick of it right now. So the key right now is to be in your integrity, to really sort of harness what your understanding of what really matters. What is really important to you? Is that job that you've been doing for 15 years really the thing that gives you joy? And if it isn't, it's now or never to figure out what you want to do next. Let's see, can you speak to whether COVID is a masculine or a feminine energy, and does it have a sole purpose? That's a good question. So if we're looking at COVID as an entity and we're looking at the chart, it is a feminine energy. And its sole purpose, let me pull up its chart actually, so while we're talking here, its sole purpose is about healing our sense of vulnerability. That's one of them. Let me go back. It's going to take me a second to get. It's demanding that we really transform. Okay, here we go. Yeah, it's a big part of this is surrender. A big part of COVID-19's, and I'll explain why. You can look at the chart right here. So when I look at the sole purpose of anyone's chart, I'm looking at the south and north nodes. And the south node for COVID-19 is in Capricorn. Capricorn is really about, it is about the taking control, so that you are stable and taking on this responsibility that, it's interesting. Capricorn South Node has a really hard time being vulnerable, and they will do anything they can to avoid being vulnerable, even to the detriment of themselves. So, I would say that a big part of the teaching, the lesson of this COVID is to look at what our vulnerabilities are. We are being forced to see just how fragile our society is. And that lesson in itself is showing us what needs to be restructured so that we can all be safe and secure, which is that North Node in Cancer. Cancer is about security as well. Cancer is about being, strong in your vulnerability. It's opening that heart chakra. It's about, taking care of the all of us, being nurturing to, being open-hearted to nurturing everyone. And I think that the other piece of this has to do with allowing those old structures to die off so that we can be more open-hearted to each other and to each other. It's really about learning how important that surrender and open-heartedness really is, that is really what matters, that it's not about the material or the achievements, the Capricorn achievements, the Capricorn ambition. It's not about how much money you have, which is something that Capricorn, in the shadow aspect of Capricorn, can get fixated on. It's not about status. That's another Capricorn aspect. It's about taking care of each other. And it's about making sure there's enough for everyone, making sure that we're all nourished, making sure that everyone feels nurtured and safe, and that it's not, what you can achieve. It's how much compassion you have. That's a Cancer aspect too, trait. Okay, so I have another question here. How are the financial institutions going to change moving forward? That's a really good question. And actually, I'm thinking about doing another presentation on how the financial situation is going to change, because we have Saturn square Uranus next year. We're getting a tiny, tiny taste of it. But Saturn square Uranus is really going to test our financial strength. Uranus in Taurus moved into that sign in May 2018. And Uranus is the planet of change. Taurus represents the markets, the currency, our relationship with real estate. So it's definitely saying it's time to completely change all of those systems. And we're kind of in that crisis phase now, but it's going to probably get more pronounced, even more pronounced next year. I don't want to be all doom and gloom about it, but I do feel like, during that New Deal period where we were in the Great Depression, that whole system had to collapse first before we could restructure it and rebuild it. And I think that what we'll be seeing this year is a continuing collapse of the old system. I don't know what that means for the banks, but the banks, I mean, I guess I do know what it means, that the banks are going to have to be doing business differently. They're going to have to figure out more innovative ways of using currency, more innovative ways of, securing our finances. And next year, I think that's really when we're going to be rebuilding it. Unfortunately, I think it has to get really a little bit worse before it gets better. I have it. Let's see. Another question is, right now it feels like a time to take stock of what matters or what's working for us. What is the time period for taking action on those insights? So taking action on those, I mean, now, really, I think that, just because we're in quarantine doesn't mean we can't take some action on some of these insights that we're having about ourselves. And you're seeing that in the ways that people are responding to each other. There's a lot of generosity of spirit happening in the midst of this darkness. A lot of people are going online to share their services, either reducing their fees or completely doing things for free. Even these celebrities are performing, for nothing online. So you're seeing people sharing their authentic selves, the sort of divine selves, sharing those freely. In terms of using these insights about yourself, I think a lot of people are going to come out of this doing something different than they were before, and not just because their jobs are no longer exist. There's something about this time that we have had to spend with ourselves and with the people that we're closest to that is reframing our idea of reality and reframing how we see what we can contribute. So I think that it's important to use what knowledge you have about yourself and about your path as it comes. I mean, it's not a time when anyone feels like taking a risk, so to speak, but it is a time when you can try things that you might not have had the courage to try before, simply because you have the time and the freedom. Even though we're quarantined, there is some kind of new freedom happening here because we're all in it together. So, for example, I'm doing all these videos. I wouldn't have been doing that before because I wouldn't have necessarily felt as confident that people would want to watch. But I know that everybody's stuck at home and I miss everyone. So I'm doing that. And for me, that was a little bit of a risk. So there are things like that that we can all contribute. There are things like that we've known in the back of our mind were a possibility, but we didn't know the world needed them until now. So I hope that answers your question, Christine. Are there any other questions? There's a lot of good, deep thought happening out there with you all. And I feel so grateful that I'm able to share anything that can feel, anything that feels enlightening or hopeful. So does COVID show signs of collapsing the patriarchy? I mean, that's a big question, Amy, but I would say maybe. I mean, that's really what this Jupiter Pluto Saturn conjunction in Capricorn. Capricorn is the patriarchy. If you had to choose a sign that represents the patriarchy, it would be Capricorn. And Uranus moving into Taurus. Taurus is the sign of feminism. So there is this sort of radical divine feminine that's coming online. And I think that, we are seeing the death of that old white male leadership, and we're seeing it in a very strong way. I think, I would not have chosen Biden as representative of this new wave of the Aquarian age, because he's sort of like part of the patriarchy too. However, I think he's sort of transitional. If he does end up in office, he's sort of transitional, and then the next president would be more aligned along the lines. And yes, Maddie's making the point, so many women have been elected to Congress. I think that's going to continue. But yeah, I would definitely say, Amy, that COVID is part of the, huge, kind of, it's detoxifying all of that old patriarchy from the systems. And then someone else had asked, I think it was Maddie, what she's heard a lot about December 2020 being the end of this timeline. I think, yeah, and also a lot of feminine leaders getting praise for COVID relief. Yeah, I do feel like we're moving into a much more female forward time. I do feel like that's happening. And I think that with what's happening in December, it's so mind-blowingly different than anything we've ever experienced that it's even hard to sort of predict how that might manifest. I think that, we will see some kind of shift and breakthrough that takes us from one paradigm to the next, so that next year and everything after December 2020 is different. Not to say that it isn't already that way now, but there's still a lot of us that are really holding on hope that we'll go back to normal. And that normal is over. I think that's, we've already, that part is really done. What we're moving into now is that transitional time of the new normal. And Sharon is saying, as women, we really have to come together. Yes, I do think we are coming together as women. I think we're seeing a lot more rise of the sort of worship of the divine feminine, the Holy Mother. Those kinds of inclinations are starting to surface in a bigger way now. And I think we'll probably continue to see that. Uranus in Taurus is so much about divine feminine, and that we have with us for the next, let's see, until 2025. So we're in a longer phase of that awakening of the divine feminine. That part of us is really just beginning to kind of stir. And I think with the midterm elections in 2018, that was very much about Uranus and Taurus and all those women getting elected to Congress. And I think we'll see, more of that in the Senate as we come into the election this year. But, I think it's important to know that we're living through something that generations from now are going to be studying in history and in the history books. And it's okay to have all kinds of feelings about it. It's okay to have your ups and downs, to have your moments of despair. but it's important to hold on to the idea that we can get through this. We can endure if we stay connected. If we stay connected and supportive of one another, we are going to get through this. And I think it's really important that we, we hold on to that sense of hope um, unwaveringly. And I think that's where the faith has got to come in. So if anything, I hope this astrology gives you the faith that you need to hang on through the next 6 months. It's not even really, is it 6 months? I'm saying till middle December. Sue is asking me, technology is playing a huge part in quarantine for communication. Will this impact the new normal, such as job shifts and being more transparency? Having more transparency. So, technology is going to be really big, bigger than it's ever been as we move into that Aquarian age starting in December. We're getting small hints of it now since March when Saturn moved into Aquarius. That's when we were all forced. Saturn is often this teacher planet. So Saturn, makes a demand. You're restricted. You can only connect through technology right now. But when we get to December, all the things that we're learning right now, technologically, will start to bear gifts. That's because Jupiter will come into alignment with that Saturn and start to share some beautiful things with us. We'll start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. We'll start to see, the fruits of our labor for the last, it will have been 8 months, I guess, by then. So yes, definitely job shifts, definitely, the way that our economy works is going to be different. There's been reports that in some of these new financial bills that they've passed, there's legislation in there for creating a digital currency, a United States digital currency. So we are moving into this much different time, financially and economically. And I think that we will be seeing probably like a workers, what did they call that in the 30s? The WPA, I think it was, more like organized projects, infrastructure projects that not only lift up the people and give people jobs who are out of work, but also rebuild the infrastructure of this country. That, I think, is something that we will begin to see into next year once we get a new president, hopefully. Any other questions? Really getting digging deep into this. I love it. I'll just hang on. We've had a good chat, a good group here. It's a really interesting time. Well, if anybody has any follow-up questions they'd like to share, and I'm getting some questions here on the chat. Oh, here we go. Lisa is asking, will the shift be just exhausting or smooth, jolting or smooth, in the shift in December through next year? Hope is the only one. So it's going to be rocky. I will not lie. This fall, I would say July, we're going to see some crazy stuff happening around the eclipses, June 21st and July 4th, around America's birthday. It's going to be weird. It's going to be interesting. And then again, when we get to the other set of eclipses in November, we do have a rocky road, but I'm going to be here and I'm going to be doing these all the time, and I'm going to help shepherd us through this. It helps me as much, probably more than it helps you. So I will be doing a lot of this stuff regularly, because I think the astrology will help us get perspective on the difficulty that we're traversing through between now and December. And I think it's important to know there are going to be a lot of ups and downs. Okay, so ups and downs. It's going to be a little bit like a roller coaster. I don't think that we're going to see anything new jump out at us. I think it's just going to be more of the same, but in a roller coaster. So we already know what the difficulty is. It's this virus. It's keeping people safe. It's just going to be the challenge of managing what we know we have to do. So I would say, we'll get through this. It will take a lot out of us. But by the time we get to December, we're going to be more unified than we've probably ever been. And if you think back to other time frames, if you're old enough to remember Jupiter in Aquarius, this was when Obama first got sworn in as a president. Jupiter was in Aquarius in 2009. So that was an incredibly hopeful year. I don't know if you guys remember that, but we had really high hopes for him, and he delivered on a lot of it. The other time we had this was when Bill Clinton was elected. If you were old enough then, and I was just a little pup, but I remember this huge wave of optimism that came after the Bush-Reagan years, that came with Clinton and all that he promised. So I do think we're going to feel that, early next year as well. And maybe it's because Biden gets elected and he has an amazing woman VP, or he's got a stacked cabinet full of all the people that really believe in the people and working for betterment of society as a whole. Maybe that's what we can expect. But we are going to go through, and I think this is true also, so many folks that maybe thought Trump was the promise, that Trump was the champion for the little people. I think a lot of those folks get a rude awakening through this year. And not that they necessarily come around to thinking he's the devil, but I do think they come around in a way that they believe in their neighbors, even if those neighbors vote differently. I think we're coming into a time where there is more unity. And maybe I'm just being optimistic, but that's how I see Jupiter, Saturn in Aquarius. So Victoria, I'm going to do a presentation on Trump. Is that something that you all would be interested in, if I could unpack his chart and sort of his transits a little bit more? I mean, it's pretty obvious he's melting down. Let's see, who else? Oh, okay. So folks, if you're interested in a reading with me one-on-one, I want to mention that I just started doing, so I'm getting a lot of yeses about the Trump presentation. Okay, so I will do that. I'll do that next. That seems right. And who's going to be VP? Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so here's what I want to mention about, before I get bumped off of Instagram. Here's what I want to mention about readings. So I had just recently decided that because so many folks are out of work and they don't know what they are going to be able to spend, I'm offering sliding scale readings for people who don't know what their budgets are 100%. You can just pay what you can afford. Because I feel like there's a lot I want to share with astrology, and I don't want cost to be a hindrance, because we all need each other right now. We all need to be on our, working our integrity, working our best selves towards the same goal. And if you think astrology can give that to you in any way, I want to make it available to you. So let's talk. Send me a note if you're interested in taking me up on that offer. And again, tune in Sundays, because I am going to continue to do those. And I'm going to try to keep up this Sunday, Wednesday thing. I don't know how long it's going to last, because it does take a lot of time. And obviously I haven't got the technology quite right. But I love doing it, and it's fun for me, and it's kind of entertaining. So what I'm going to do is, if you missed this presentation, I'm going to post it on YouTube. I'll try to edit it so that it makes more sense. And also, I want to ask if anybody out there has a social media tech savvy person who can help me edit some things on YouTube. I would love that, and I would pay them. I need someone to help me with some tech stuff so that's a little bit more streamlined. And would love to hear from anybody who's looking for some work that way. And yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much for joining me and for showing up and giving all these amazing deep questions. I think it really, it just makes me feel really connected. And and just like, I miss you guys. I just keep waiting for them to get the airplane service back so I can start to see some peeps out in LA again, and my Nashville people, because I miss seeing everyone in person. But this is the next best thing, and let's just stay in touch. And yeah, take care, everybody. Talk to you again soon. Bye bye.